So let's talk about servitors or thought forms. I think over the next 3 weeks, what I'm going to do is I'm going to split this content into 3 parts, basically. Today I'm going to talk about just generally about servitors, thought forms, some of the other aspects of them, what they are, what you can expect, things like that. Then the following videos I will outline ritual or magical practice for creating your own servitor, but both from a chaos point of view, chaos magic point of view, and then from a Kabbalistic point of view, because the methods do differ quite a bit actually. So let's have a look at servitors themselves. Servitors are energetic thought forms that you, the magician or the witch, you would create in order to go out and do things for you. Now, what they can do for you can be anything really. You've got a wide choice. You can bring back information, you can bring back knowledge, you can spy on people, you can attract more customers and bring in more money. You can, if you're having problems with clients who aren't paying, for instance, then you can create a servitor for that purpose. You can create for protection. You can create for healing. The amount of things you can do with servitors is actually endless. It all depends on your needs and your requirements and what you want to do with a servitor. Now, there are various other forms of thought forms. You've got your general servitor, which you usually find in chaos magic. In Kabbalistic practice, it's usually called an artificial elemental, because in chaos magic or witchcraft, you can work with just the elements, but you can also work with your own personal power. In Kabbalistic practice, you generally only work with the elements themselves. And in Kabbalah, you only work with 3, air, fire, and water. Whereas in other practices, other traditions and paths, you'll probably use all 4, which would be air, fire, water, and earth. So, as I say, there are some differences and variations between the 2 paths and practices themselves. So that's what a thought form or a servitor is. In Kabbalah, they are generally, just because you work with the elements instead of your own personal power, then they're generally called artificial elementals. You also get egregores. Now, I'm not going to show you or teach you how to create egregores, maybe at a much later stage. An egregore is, you could actually say an egregore is a god or a goddess. In many regards they are. If you look at the Christian God is an egregore. In most cases, even throughout all religions actually, all religions, traditions, paths, if you're working with a spirit, quite often, I'm not going to say in all cases, but quite often you will actually find that they are egregores. An egregore is very similar to a servitor, so it's an energetic being that has been created by a magician or a witch, a person, a human being. And that thought form, servitor, whatever you want to call it, was sent out to do particular things. So they have particular aspects tied to them. Like a money servitor would have the aspect of wealth, prosperity, things like that. A love servitor, to go out and find your true love or attract love into your life or sex into your life, whatever it may be, will have those aspects. But what happens is, if the servitor is continued to work, if you continue working with a servitor and you feed it more and more and more energy, it's going to start becoming a bit bigger. Now, a single magician, a single person working with a servitor isn't going to be able to put enough energy into to form it into an egregore, something that big. But if a group of people start working with that same servitor, then you have a group of people that are putting in energy. The bigger that group grows, the bigger the energy becomes, the bigger the servitor becomes. It becomes sentient, and with enough people, with a big enough group of people, it can actually become an egregore. So the way this was actually explained to me by a Russian gentleman years ago, and he was speaking specifically of the shaman and the shamanka in the Russian traditions, is that an egregore is, if you imagine a cloud over a group of people. So you have this group of people and you have a cloud over them, and those group of people are working with this egregore, this cloud, and they keep pushing more and more and feeding more and more energy into this cloud, and it grows bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And because they are plugged into the egregore, they can also get knowledge. So it's very much also a group mind, and I'll go into group mind just now. So it is a group mind thing where you plug into an egregore, you can get knowledge, information, and things from the egregore, which is knowledge and information that people have actually put into the egregore, into the cloud, let's say. And so there's a give and take. So you can take the information and the knowledge, you also give back the energy, which allows the egregore to grow and also survive. And if you consider the Christian God is probably the biggest egregore there is around today. Now, I'm not saying that all gods and goddesses are egregores. You do have the original energies, the original powers. But in a lot of cases, what's happened is those original powers have been introduced into a certain society. And it may be a small village, for instance, like thousands of years back. It might be a small village, but that village starts worshipping that deity. And over time, over generations, over centuries, you might find that the intention there gets morphed a bit. So from the original energy that was the god or goddess, it's become something a little bit different. And that can become an egregore. It obviously ties back to the original energy, so there is a connection to it. I believe. That's my opinion. But it's not the original energy. So quite often the gods and goddesses that people actually worship, the spirits people actually work with, they're quite often egregores, and there's nothing wrong with it. I'm not saying it's wrong that you're not worshipping proper gods and goddesses and proper entities and what have you. An egregore is an egregore. It's whether you're working with an original power or you're working with a power that is an egregore, it still has the power, and it's that power that you're working with. So egregore is a very interesting topic, but it's not quite what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to be focusing on specifically servitors, which can actually help you with your life. And as I say, you can do anything with them, whether it be bringing in money, bringing in love, finding sex, helping your spiritual journey, bringing in more knowledge, protection. It can be many, many, many things, whatever you actually need and desire. So I do want to have a look at the group mind. I said I'd have a look at the group mind, and I'm just going to do this briefly. The group mind is actually a very, very powerful thing. It's sometimes called the mob mind as well. So you imagine a situation where there's a large group of people in one area, and one person all of a sudden has a gripe with somebody else, and they start screaming and shouting, and then all of a sudden there's another person that comes in and starts screaming and shouting at them as well, or about the whatever the intent is, whether it's a specific person or maybe somebody gets up, it's like a political thing or whatever it is, but one person starts and then another person catches on and they start as well, and then 2 more, 3 more people, and then all of a sudden the group starts growing. The energy starts moving from that one person towards all of the other people. And all of a sudden you've got this mass of people that are all connected to a group mind or a mob mind. And it's not specifically exactly like an egregore, but if you were to actually see the energy, you'd probably find that a cloud forms over the top. However, once that group then disperses and people start disconnecting from that energy, from that group mind, then the energy starts to calm down and everything goes back to normal. So it is very similar to what we're talking about with an egregore, except an egregore is a bit more, the group mind and the mob mind is a bit violent. It can often be quite violent, whereas an egregore is meant more for spiritual or for spiritual growth, for knowledge, things like that. That we're talking about anyway. You can cross borders with all these terms and words and everything else, obviously. But back to servitors. Let's get back to servitors. Okay, so servitor is an energetic being that you create to go out and perform a task, whatever you need. And a lot of people will say that you are to command the servitor. And this goes very much into any kind of work where you're working with entities, whether it's an energetic being that you're creating, or if it's a spirit or an angel or a demon. I mean, specifically in the areas of demons where you get the evocation work and the Goesha and, the Book of Solomon and all these grimoires that were written a few centuries ago, or even a couple centuries ago, that were very Christian-based. And they always talk about commanding the demons. And it's the same aspects here, because a lot of people working magic, because they have that type of mindset where they think they're supposed to be commanding the demons when you're not, it doesn't actually work that well when you do command them. But they take that kind of perspective and they bring it into their servitor work, because they're creating this energetic being, and it makes them feel like God. I think it does kind of give some people a bit of a God complex sometimes, and because of that, they feel like they're supposed to command the spirit. And it's almost like creating a child, and this child you feel like this child, because you created this child, because this little baby is in your life now and it came from you and obviously somebody else, that you have to command it and you have to push it around and you have to force it to do your will and your bidding, and it has absolutely no say in the matter, and it's just this thing that gets pushed around and beaten around. And you've got to view it the same way as if it was actually your baby, your physical child. This is a creation. You're making this entity, this energetic being. You're creating it. It becomes your child, and you've got to view it the same way. It's actually an interesting book by Clive Barker, Abarat, and there's actually a scenario in there where one of the characters has created an entity to do its work around the house, and it beats it up, it pushes it around, it puts it in a cage when it's not working, and generally treats it like an animal, worse than an animal. You shouldn't even treat animals like that. And eventually it gets a foothold and it gets out, and because of all the pain that it's been put on it, it just retaliates, and it comes back and it just destroys the person, the owner, the master. And even if you look into BDSM and internal enslavement, things like that, where you have a master-slave scenario, the master isn't there to push the slave around. The master doesn't treat the slave badly and doesn't treat the slave like an animal or worse than an animal. The master is there to encourage, to care for, to help, to bring out aspects in the slave that the slave is too scared to actually bring out or do anything with. The master isn't there to be an animal, actually. You can't be an animal. This is your baby, this is your creation. You've got to treat it the way that you would if it was a physical being. So I just want you to keep that in mind, because I remember in the past I saw a lot of books written about servitors and commanding and tying and caging, and I don't know how people can do that, but anyway. So I just wanted to bring that up, bring it to the forefront. Yeah, so that's a servitor. There's actually one I forgot, the artificial anthropoid. Now, the artificial anthropoid, you may have heard of golem, and not from Lord of the Rings. A golem is mostly found in the Kabbalistic Hebrew texts, and it's a physical body that has been given life, and it's usually created for protection and war. There was a golem of I've forgotten the actual name of it. It was in Prague. But have a look for golem and Prague, and you should come across the story. It's a very famous story. So golem is something that if people can create golems nowadays, they must be tapped into something that most of us can't get access to, because it's one of those hidden secrets. And again, it's just an incredibly interesting topic. So golem is a physical body, usually made of clay, and the rabbi would perform a certain ritual around the clay body, and it actually brings it to life, and it has a particular Hebrew text written on its forehead, and you wipe one letter out and it dies. So it's basically life and death. But yeah, anyway, artificial anthropoid, the golem, just one of those interesting topics that's worth actually looking into, just out of interest's sake. So that's the servitor. Oh, and the one thing about the servitor is that it's going to tie in nicely with, obviously, chaos magic, but also sigil magic, which I spoke about a few weeks back. Because in the chaos magic format, you create a sigil, and from that sigil you then create a name, a chant, and obviously you have a glyph that represents the servitor. So do go watch that video as well. I'll link it above. And then next week what I'll do is I'll talk about how to create a servitor from the chaos magic point of view. And the following week I'll discuss the same thing from the Kabbalistic point of view. If you've got any questions about servitors, about thought forms, please let me know, and what I'll do, I'll include the answers into another video, because it's a broad topic, so probably a lot that I haven't covered, and probably a lot that I won't cover in the next videos. Quite often sometimes we work with something so often that it might become obvious to us, and we forget about actually including it in this type of format and this type of information. So if you've got any questions, please comment below with them, and I'll address all of the questions. And if you like my videos, please like, share and subscribe, and hit the little notification bell, and I will see you next week. Well, I'll see you on Friday, because I'm bringing another video on Friday, but that's a different topic. But this topic, I'll see you next week, and have a great one. Cheers.